Hello Summoners, and welcome to another episode of ProGuides Best Champions to Main, now on patch 10.8. These champions are all about high performance with low ban rates that are unlikely to get nerfed in the immediate future. The most reliable picks in the game that are the most worthy of investing time in. Before we get started though, our question of the day is, which champion have you been maining lately? Let us know in the comments below, and without further delay, let's get right into it. Maokai will be the first champion on our list of 10.8 champions, and he's doing really well for himself lately. Maokai is a CC-heavy utility tank that sustains himself in lane through his passive, which heals him upon auto-attacking after enough spells have been cast in his presence. This healing makes him extremely hard to kill in extended fights, and since he's Maokai and borderline unkillable anyway, all his fights are extended fights. Combine that with the rest of his kit that allows him to engage from a distance with his wide-rooting ult, lock them down further with his W, and then knock them away with his Q, and you got a strong contender for best team fighting champion in the top lane. His E saplings are also good for objective control and keeping areas zoned off, so he's pretty well rounded. It's nothing flashy, but it's honest work and nobody's banning him. Nasus is our second pick in the top lane, mostly due to the recent buffs he received. Now that Nasus' wither range grows with stacks, he's a bit less kiteable than before, and since being kited out is his primary weakness, he's performing much better in his games. For those of you that don't know, Nasus' W wither allows him to slow the attack speed and movement speed of whoever he targets. When Nasus stacks his Q damage, which is an empowered auto attack that grows stronger every time he last hits something with it, the cast range on his W increases, which means he's more easily able to activate his ult for the tank stats, DOT, and extended range it offers. Throw down his E to shred an enemy's armor, and then smack them into the dirt with his farmed Q. Nasus was already a late game beast, but now he's even more so. People just haven't caught on yet. Kled is our third pick for the top lane, and if you watched our OP picks video for 10.8, this will sound familiar. Luckily for Kled players, he has the benefit of being both OP and an unpopular ban. Anyway, Kled is one of League's most gifted brawlers in the top lane. He can engage with his Q's bear trap on a rope, stick to a target with his E's jousting ability, and stab away at them with his W's attack speed steroid. What makes Kled such a good pick to main though is his ult, which allows him to make incredible flanking plays with its move speed increase, or even to make picks with his allies at his back. Being able to impact the map like that is an invaluable tool for a team to have, especially when you want to be the one making fights happen. Here are those top lane builds for you. Go ahead and take another peek at those before we move ahead to the jungle picks. Kha'Zix will be our first pick for the jungle. Kha'Zix is a jungle assassin who excels at catching people out and deleting them before they can realize they've even made a mistake. Kha'Zix is a great champion for anyone looking to take an aggressive approach to their jungling and kill the enemy jungler as frequently as they can. His Q is an enhanced auto attack that does a ton of damage, even more so when a target is isolated. This is his biggest chunk of damage, and he applies it easily after closing the gap with his E jump and slowing enemies with his W. It's even easier to do with his ult stealth, buying him a few seconds of invisibility. And once Ka hits 6, he becomes a menace in the jungle. He definitely requires a good understanding of enemy jungle pathing, but even if you can't demolish the enemy jungler, his ganks are pretty solid too. So he's seeing a lot of success right now. Our second jungle pick for 10.8 is Shyvana. With her AP build, Shyvana is basically a bursty AP fighter who slings fireballs that make the Elder Drake jealous. The AP ratio on her E is insane, and if you land it, the enemy will almost always have to step back and recall. Unless they're, dead, which is very possible after you've collected a few Dark Harvest stacks. Outside of her fireballs though, Shyvana also has an auto attack reset on her Q, and her W does a decent amount of damage as well, as it swirls around her and gives her a move speed bonus. The ult turns her into a dragon and unlocks a second set of abilities that basically amount to the same function as the normal abilities, except with a larger area of effect for each of them. Aside from being able to obliterate targets, Shyvana also does bonus damage to dragons, making her a good choice for maintaining objective control. As the tank meta prophecy has decreed time and again, where there are tanks, there are Trundles, and he is our third jungle pick for patch 10.8. Trundle is a strong brawling jungler with a well-rounded kit, but he excels against tank comps. His ult lets him steal tank stats from whoever he targets with it, giving him enough survivability to run people down with his W's increased move speed and attack speed. His Q is an auto reset that gives him some extra damage by stealing it from its target, which combos nicely with the attack speed from his W. His E's Pillar of Ice is his most nuanced ability, since he can use it to block pathways or even to interrupt channels and dashes. But it's simple enough to use at basic level, and it makes escaping Trundle a whole ordeal in itself. With the tank meta looking like it's here to stay, now's the time to invest yourself in Trundle and reap the rewards. And we'll go ahead and show you those builds for the jungle one more time. Take a second to check those out. Galio will be our first mid laner to main in patch 10.8. Galio hasn't seen the light of mid lane for some time now, but he's back after a few buffs from Riot. Galio is an AP champion that's healthier than most without really being a full-on tank, and he's a great pick for anyone who likes to roam a lot and make plays around their teammates' aggression. His Q sends out 2 tornadoes that converge at the end of their path and continue to deal damage for a few moments, giving Galio a nice method of clearing waves when paired with his passive's AoE smash. Once the wave is cleared, Galio can look for opportunities to ult onto his teammates and turn fights using his E's dash and his W's taunt. Any champion that can impact the map as well as Galio can will almost always be a decent choice, but Galio is looking exceptionally strong lately, and he can even be flexed into support if you get autofilled. Our second pick in the mid lane is Neeko. Neeko is a burst mage who does particularly well with making picks and locking enemies down. Thanks to her Q's AoE and base damage, she has a fast wave clear when she wants it, or a nice burst of damage when she wants to focus on a trade instead. On top of being bursty, Neeko's a hard champion to pin down thanks to her E rooting whoever it passes through. Even more than that, she's able to use her W to slip away from danger or turn a fight on its head with her ult's giant circle of damage and its stun. This particular Neeko build is centered around making picks rather than directly stealing damage though, so make sure you're using your Hextech GLP and your Twin Shadows to maximum effect. For our third mid lane pick, we recommend Malzahar. Malzahar is one of the more hated champions in League, but he's only so unloved because he's such an efficient pick with very little effort. Malzahar has some of the best wave clear in the game, with his E doing a strong DOT to whoever it's placed on, and since it jumps to a new target if its original target dies, it has no trouble snowballing its way through an entire wave when it's coupled with Malzahar's W Voidlings. He can also refresh its duration and cut the wave simultaneously with his Q's damage, but that's more situational since Malz can also use it to silence enemy champions. Malzahar's R is his most hated ability because it's a point-and-click suppression that forces people to either sit there for its duration or pay the QSS tax. Either way, not a fun time, but an effective champion to have in your pool. Here are those mid lane builds again for those of you who missed it the first time around. Then we'll head into the bot lane. Jhin will be our first bot laner for this list, mostly due to his ability to bully a lot of the popular carries right now. Jhin does a lot of early damage thanks to his free crit every 4th auto, but his Q's bouncing grenade is nothing to scoff at either, especially if you land it after it's finished off a few targets. Aside from being a strong early bully, Jhin is also a great utility pick with his W's long-ranged root and his E's traps being so effective at zoning off enemies from objectives. His ult is useful for finishing off kills or for engaging fights from a distance, but no matter what you're using it for, it hits like a truck. The long range on Jin's W also means he's not half bad for roaming up to mid between waves or helping his jungler make aggressive plays. He's a great ADC for players who want to take a more team play oriented approach to the game. Ashe is our second pick in the bot lane, in no small part due to the 20% increase to her Q's attack speed steroid in the late game. Ashe is a utility-focused carry, so generally Riot makes it a little harder for carries that have a lot of team utility to put out damage. But after this buff, it's going to be hard to compete with Ashe in the late game. Her W already gives her a nice cushy laning phase with its easy poke, and her ability to track junglers with her E's Hawk Shot makes a good Ashe incredibly frustrating to play against. Throw in her ult's global stun and you have a champion that's more capable of carrying a game through map presence alone. But with her attack speed now scaling better than ever, she's going to become a monster. Start playing her now before people really catch on and start banning her. Tristana will be our third bot laner for patch 10.8. Trist is a hyper-scaling ADC with a remarkable ability to keep herself safe while dealing some of the best DPS in the game. Trist's passive makes her attack range get a little bit bigger with every level, meaning that as time passes, she becomes harder and harder to approach. Aside from her scaling range advantage, she also gets a big jump out of her W that she can use to reposition offensively or defensively as she sees fit. If an enemy somehow manages to make it onto her, she can ult them away with her point-and-click knockback. But come late game, when you pair her E's explosion with her Q's auto attack steroid, she rarely needs to run away anymore. Trist deals a lot of damage, and since most of the current popular ADCs can't abuse her weaknesses during the laning phase, she's in a great spot right now. The ADC build should be up on your screen now, so we'll keep those up there for a bit, and then we'll hop into the support picks. Our first support pick for patch 10.8 is Lulu. Lulu is a well-rounded enchanter pick who does well with both defending her allies and enabling them to go aggressive on enemies. In lane, Lulu has a surprisingly strong poke with her E's burst when it's placed on enemies, followed up by her Q damage. If the trade gets extended into a fight, she can either use her W to increase her carry's move speed and attack speed, or polymorph an enemy into a useless critter. When she has to play on the defensive, her Q's slow helps keep enemies off her carry, and her E's allied cast shield is nothing to sneeze at. Finally, Lulu's ultimate is one of the stronger defensive spells in the game, increasing a targeted ally's size, knocking up enemies around them, and giving them extra defensive stats for its duration. This ability to make allies so hard to kill is why Lulu is a good champion to play right now, since almost no one can enable hypercarry ADCs quite like her. Sona is our second support pick thanks to her recent buffs. Sona is a team buffing enchanter that does well poking in lane and keeping her teammates buffed up in teamfights. Her Q is an AoE bonus damage increase to allies, as well as sending out 2 damaging bolts. If it empowers her auto attack through her passive, it makes her deal a large chunk of damage when the auto connects. Her W is an AoE shield that also heals up 2 allies, and its empowered auto drops the damage output of whichever enemy she hits. Sona's E is an AoE move speed buff that helps her team rotate to objectives faster, and when she chooses to use it for her passive, her auto attack will slow its target. Sona's ultimate is what makes her such an iconic team fighter, with its ability to CC an entire team into dancing if they're tight-packed enough. Sona has a lot of utility, but the trade-off is that she's insanely squishy. The reason she's coming back into popularity is because the resurgence of tanks means less assassins are being played, so there's less possibility of her getting bursted before she gets her abilities off. Alistar is our final pick for patch 10.8's Champions to Main, and it's been a long time coming. Alistar received some buffs to his healthiness in lane a little while back, and we're starting to see just how effective it was. Alistar is one beefy boy, and he offers a ton of frontline style peel for his team. His Q is an AoE knockup around him, and it can either be comboed with his W's headbutt dash to engage on an enemy, or he can use them both independently to keep enemies off his carries. His E empowers his next auto attack to stun a target, which, like his other abilities, can be used to either peel for his carries or as a follow-up to his knockup engages. While learning to use his WQ combo is somewhat nuanced and requires some practice, his ult is pretty straightforward. Alistar roars to cleanse any CC he's affected by, then he gets a bunch of tank stats and a small chunk of AD. This is an excellent ability for diving towers due to its damage reduction, but it's just as useful for taking the brunt of damage in teamfights. When it comes to Alistar, he likes to say you can't milk those, but you can definitely milk his existence for all the LP it's worth, which is a lot. Before we wrap things up, here are those support builds for you. Thanks for watching, guys. We hope you enjoy this video along with the rest of our patch 10.8 series. Once again, let us know in the comments which champion you've been maining lately so we can hit you with the hot fresh heart react. We really do love hearing from you guys. See you guys next time. Good luck out there on the Rift, and wash your hands.